let's imagine that you have administered an assessment that is um, reliable, valid, and practical. And now it's time for you to summarize the results of the assessment. So in this video, you are going to learn how to describe and differentiate three types of test scores, which are raw scores, criterion reference scores, and norm-reference scores. And I think you're already familiar with what criterion reference and norm reference mean, and interpret the report card for your future students or parents. So let's first look at the raw scores. Raw scores are based solely on the number or point value of correctly answered items. Like for instance, all of you have solved the final exam practice, and let's say that you get 1.2 out of 2. So raw scores literally means how many points or values you earned from the assessment. So it is very easy to calculate because I can, like for instance, 1.2 means you got 3 multiple choice questions right, which was worth 0.4 point each. However, it's kind of difficult to interpret these scores. What does this mean? Is it 1.2 out of 2? Is it a good score or bad score? And this is the reason why we often use criterion reference or norm reference scores. So criterion reference scores indicate what a student has achieved relative to specific objectives or standards. So for instance, 1.2, it can mean either pass or fail, depending on the predetermined standards, or the certain kind of scores can mean the level of competence, whether they are beginner, proficient, advanced, or they can also be like level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So an example would be like TOEFL IBT test. So TOEFL is an English proficiency test that is developed by ETS. So they have predetermined standards, as you can see. And if the students get the raw score that is over 24, they are assumed to meet these kind of standards. So test takers who score at the advanced level typically can understand a range of academic or low frequency vocabulary as well as common meanings of words. So if students get more than 24, they get the criterion referenced like test result, which is advanced level. So like although you cannot interpret what 24 or 25 mean because they have the predetermined standards and they have this kind of criterion reference score, they can kind of understand that, oh, if I get like more than 24, I'm at an advanced level in English language. The last type of scores are norm reference scores, which indicate how a student's performance compares with average performance of others. So the examples are grade equivalent scores, which indicates at which grade level students perform, and age equivalent scores, which indicates at which age the student's performance can fall into. The percentiles and standard scores are the examples of non-reference scores. So let's look at the example. So Mary and Abby seems to take the same mathematical test, and they got the same raw scores, which is 21 out of 45. However, their norm reference scores are quite different. So if you can look at the standard score, Abby's score is much higher than Mary. Can you guess why it is? Because if Abby, who is 5 years younger than Mary, can get the same raw score with Mary, it means that Abby's norm reference scores is much higher than Mary. So percentile rank, the 47 percentile rank means that Mary did better than 47% of other students of the 12 years old. Abby, on the other hand, did well almost all, like most of her peers, right? Like 99.9 percentile means that she did better than 99.9% of her peers. And Mary and Abby, since they got the same raw score, they mean that they can do the mathematics at the grade equivalent level of 6.2. So Mary, I think she is her average. So she's the sixth grade and she can perform as the sixth graders. Abby is 7 years old, but she can also perform at the sixth graders level. So even though Mary and Abby got the same raw scores, it really depends. The norm reference scores can tell the different information about Mary and Abby's relative standing. And let's look deeper what these standard scores mean. So standard scores reflect individual position on the normal distribution. So I may need to activate your prior knowledge of statistics, but I promise that it wouldn't be too difficult. So just think about this like normal graph, and standard scores gives us the information, gives teachers and students the information where they fall in this normal distribution. And because it gives us the relative standing, the standard scores tell us how far a person's performance is from the mean in terms of standard deviation units. So mean is mathematical average of a set of scores, whereas standard deviation is a statistic indicating the amount of variability characterizing a set of scores. So a quick reminder of what standard deviation means. So let's say that the normal distribution of standard scores of verbal IQ test and math IQ test and spatial IQ test is like this. Which do you think has the highest standard deviation? IQ verbal because it has the highest peak. Actually, the spatial because again, standard deviation means the amount of variability. In other words, how far is the score from the mean of the test. So because this is more spread out, because this distribution is more spread out, it means that it has higher standard deviation. Whereas IQ verbal test, students' standard scores are relatively closer to the mean, which is like 100. So IQ verbal has the smallest standard deviation, and math is in between the verbal IQ test scores and spatial IQ standardized scores. Can you think of tests that use standard scores? Well, IQ scores and scores from educational testing service like SAT and GRE. What do they have in common? They are again to select a few applicants or to see the relative performance or standing of the test takers. And most of you who have taken SAT, I think that you have high scores because not everyone came to the Ohio State University. So these standard scores, again, show one's relative standing or performance compared to others. Then how can we use scores in the classroom? For teacher-developed assessments, criterion reference scores are most useful. It is because as teachers, you would be interested in whether students have achieved the predetermined standards or objectives. However, it can be a little cumbersome and like challenging to use this kind of criterion reference scores every time. Like for instance, when you're doing just a quick quiz or like an exercise activity, maybe you can use raw scores. Norm reference scores can be occasionally appropriate if you need to identify the best students. Like for instance, when you are doing an essay contest, whether you have to select the top 3 students for regional contest, or when you're assessing complex skills such as scholastic aptitude. The last part of this video is applying the knowledge that you have learned in actually interpreting the report card. So imagine that you need to interpret this report card to Jenny's parent, who is quite dissatisfied with Jenny's result. How would you respond to parents' questions below? So first, let's look at the report card. The first question of the parent is that, oh, Jenny got the lowest score, which is 23, in language expression. Do you think she needs assistance? How would you respond? Well, 23 is a raw score, which means she got 24 out of 23. So Jenny only got one question wrong. So I would definitely tell her that she does not need assistance and she needs more compliment. And after knowing that, the parents got a little relieved, but they got triggered by the 60, the low score. So they ask, I cannot believe that Jenny only got 60 out of 100 in her social studies. Is she doing well in your social studies class? How would you comfort the parent? Well, I would point out that it's a percentile rank. So 60 means that it's not she got 60, it's not that Jenny got 60 out of 100, but it means that she did better than 60% of her peers. So actually, she's doing better than the average. So I would say that she's doing well in social studies class. Although she's not excelling, like she's not doing like really, really well as in other subjects, but I wouldn't point that out. But I'll just comfort the students that 60 in percentile rank means that Jenny did better than the 60% of her peers. And the parent got finally relieved, but as a last question, they ask, how does my child perform compared to other students? Well, I think this is because the parent is asking about comparison. I need to refer to these norm-referenced scores. Maybe I can point out that grade equivalent scores that Jenny's a fourth graders, but she's performing at like ninth graders level, sixth graders level, like fifth graders level. So I would probably comfort the students like that they do not really need to worry about Jenny's performance, and be a little more chill about Jenny's performance. So again, there may be some students and parents who do not know how to interpret these scores. So it should be your job to give them the right information and give the right interpretation.